This lens is probably my favorite new budget lens for full-frame Sony mirrorless cameras. The Viltrox 20mm f2.8 lens for Sony E-mount that also has autofocus is an amazing option for photographers and videographers who are just entering into their creative career in 2024. I reached out to Viltrox to ask if they'd be willing to send me this lens to review for my YouTube audience, and they were kind enough to do so. But all of the thoughts and opinions about this lens are obviously my own. Let's start with the design. The design is very simple. It's just all black. It says AF 20mm f2.8 full frame E-mount right there, and that's about it. It's a Viltrox lens. It looks really good. It comes with a lens hood that is helpful, but it doesn't actually click into place. It just uses tension to stay right there, and I don't really have any concerns of it falling off. That's just something to note. And a lens cap and obviously an end cap. So this is the lens. It's very simple. I really like how lightweight this lens is and how well it performs on all sorts of Sony mirrorless cameras, whether it's an APS-C size sensor or a full frame mirrorless camera. In 2024, this lens comes in at $158, which is insanely cheap. A lot of the vintage film style lenses or just really crappy lenses in general are not even cheaper than $200. And this lens is $158. For me, what this lens does is prove that if you are someone who wants to enter into filmmaking or photography in 2024, you are without excuse. I've done a ton of videos on this channel about the NEX Sony cameras that are all I found for $69, one of them, $80. They're so cheap. So if you grabbed one of those NEX cameras and paired it with this Viltrox 20mm lens, you really have no excuse not to be creating really solid images in 2024. Let's talk about some more specifics, starting with the autofocus performance. I've actually found personally that the autofocus for video is really solid. I actually shot my last YouTube video using this lens, and I don't think anybody noticed. I currently am shooting on the 20mm f1.8 lens from Sony. I love this lens. This is the 22.8, and I don't think anybody even noticed. Maybe you noticed that the background was a little bit less shallow of a depth of field because of that 2.8 aperture versus the 1.8 aperture that I'm shooting on right now. Regardless, this lens had zero problem tracking me forward and backwards, side to side, using the IAF tracking system of the FX3, so it tracked perfectly. And that's tended to be my experience when shooting with the Viltrox lens in general for video, is that it does a pretty good job at focusing in most situations. I did notice on the photo side that it was a little bit slower, and I could hear the motors of the lens trying to hunt for focus a time or two, especially in lower light environments, or if I was trying to focus on a subject that was a darker object, like other lenses or camera bodies that are black. It had a little bit more of a difficult time with those kind of situations. But in general, the autofocus of this lens performs pretty well on these Sony mirrorless cameras. As we take a look at the photo performance of this lens as well, you can see that the photos actually look really good. I love the 20mm focal length for landscape photography or street photography. I think 20mm is wide enough to make it look like a wide angle lens, but not so wide that it looks so distorted like a 16mm or a 12 or 14mm lens would. I use the 20mm focal length on YouTube every single time I'm filming these videos. I'm filming on it right now. I'm in a smaller studio space in my house, in the loft of my house, so I need that 20mm focal length to capture the entirety of my scene here. So this lens works great for even YouTube setups like that. As far as the optical performance of this lens, I would say it's pretty solid. It's nothing outstanding. It's not the sharpest lens that you'll ever use, but overall it's really good. And I think that if you're someone who's just starting out and you have a modest budget to work with and you don't want to drop thousands of dollars on your camera and lens bundle, this is a great way to be able to buy a Sony Alpha camera like the NEX6 or the A6000 or A5100, these cameras that I've talked about on this channel, and then pair that with an affordable lens option. One of the great things about this lens is the fact that it is a full frame lens. So if you want to start on a smaller APS-C Sony camera that's a little bit cheaper, that's great. This lens will work great with it. It'll act more like a 30mm lens would on a full frame camera. So think about that. You will get a little bit of a crop factor there. But when you're ready to move up to a full frame camera, this lens will last you for years and years and be able to transfer from body to body over time rather than just be a dedicated APS-C lens. That's fine. There's a lot of great APS-C glass out there, but this lens is a full frame lens to be able to transfer from your APS-C to your full frame bodies. Another thing I like about this lens is right here in the lens mount, you see that USB-C firmware support is built into the lens right here. I love that these third-party manufacturers are thinking through the fact that Sony is doing a bunch of crazy things with their cameras, and there's always a possibility that they're going to add a feature into a camera that they would like to be able to pair with their third-party lenses. So I love the fact that this has a USB-C port built right into the lens to be able to upgrade firmware at a later date. In short, I often get asked on social media, especially in my Instagram DMs, Craig, what is a great, affordable affordable wide-angle lens option for the Sony E-mount system, and I can confidently say that in 2024, this is probably at the top of my list as far as recommendations for wide-angle budget lenses, because there's not a lot of lenses that are cheaper than this that also support autofocus and have this good optical performance. Thanks so much for taking time to watch this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I have a ton more videos on this channel you can check out right here. Thanks so much, guys. Much love.